Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everybody, it's Crestani with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I am joined by the beautiful Holly Erin Copeland. So she's a former ecologist turned guide to the wild within. Through her work in Inner Rewilding, she helps spiritual seekers, visionaries, and earth-conscious leaders return to their wild intelligence of their being. Rooted in modern non-dual awareness and the wisdom of the body, Holly creates sacred containers for deep healing and remembrance, where frequency, ceremony, somatic attunement, and presence converge. Her work is a love song to those ready to reawaken coherence between body, soul, and earth. With a background in conservation biology and decades of spiritual practice, Holly blends science and mysticism into a truly integrative path. She is trained in human potential coaching, neuromeditation, subtle energy meditation, biofield tuning, breathwork, Reiki, and ceremonial plant medicine guidance. She lives among the oaks in Nevada City, California, where she sings to the land, listens to the trees, and celebrates the beauty of this wild, precious life. So big welcome to the show, Holly.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and hello to everybody listening. I'm so delighted to be here.
There's so much I want to unpack there, but I feel like your career progression was almost a natural step because you already were quite involved with nature. And then you have this beautiful spiritual element that came in. Do you want to share a bit about that journey?
Sure. I would say, I guess I would consider myself a spiritual person, but I had a existential crisis of sorts in my mid 50s about 8 years ago. At that time, what I was really feeling was in my head. I was a scientist, so I did a lot of analytical work and research, and I felt kind of in my head. I didn't feel in my heart. I didn't know how to get out of this kind of all the voices that are constantly chattering with me. And just had a feeling of like, I get the spiritual talk, but it doesn't feel like it's landing in my heart as my lived experience of deep happiness and well being. And instead, even though everything on the external, sort of, as I like to say, it's like I could check the boxes of like meaningful career, loving husband, kids who were high school soccer stars. Like I'd made this success on the outside look really perfect. But inside, I felt overwhelmed. I felt sad by the state of the world. I felt, is it ever going to be enough? Will this ever stop? And a feeling of like I'm on this treadmill that I can't get off. And I feel like there's just always the next thing coming. And that left me with a feeling of kind of restlessness and not true, deep, like trusted happiness where I really felt content in my soul.
So it's just this deep longing that there's something more for me than what I'm currently living.
Yeah. Even though, here's the thing, like when you're in your 20s and 30s, that can be taken over with just a subtle feeling of like, well, yeah, but I really don't have the perfect job, or, well, yeah, but I don't have the perfect, I'm really not in the right relationship, or whatever, check your box of the thing. So in my 20s and 30s, a lot of my life was just spent like making all those things right. And then what happened in my mid 40s was just like, wait a minute, I've basically done those things and I'm still not happy. What am I missing? And yeah, I went on a path to find the missing thing. Yeah.
And so what is inner rewilding? What does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, in ecology, we have a term called rewilding. And what that means is, right, we think of rewilding as bringing nature back on the earth, right? And so it's that feeling of bringing nature back into her natural state, like letting her be, right? What I call inner rewilding is actually discovering our natural state. So reclaiming our natural human state, which it turns out is joy and beauty. It's not, believe it or not, overwhelm, anxiety, stress, and fear, and whatever else that is. And so whatever, name your thing that people feel. Yes, we have those feelings, but actually what the Tibetans, what I learned through the path that took me into this deep feeling of inner well-being was that actually our natural state is peace and happiness, and that we can learn to actually find that place now. And we don't have to sit in a meditation cave for 10 years to find it, believe
Thank
it
you
or
for
not.
saying that. Thank you.
You do not. It does, it can be very helpful to have a practice of some sort, but it doesn't need to be, 10 years in a cave. And I like to say that because I want people to know that this is accessible to everyone, right? And of course, sages and spiritual teachers say this all the time, like, you are already enlightened, your enlightened self is here. And I discovered that, and discovered actually the beauty that is actually here in every moment, and how to access that through practices, through, as the Tibetans kind of call them, pointings. They're kind of called pointing out practices, pointing out this way of discovering the beauty that's here. And so that, combined with the other things, that was kind of one part of the path that I learned. And in fact, what Inner Rewilding became 4 principles, or key principles. So one of them is awaken to peace, what I just described. Awakening to peace is your true nature. Another one is attune to the living universe. So this is that recognition of the animus, the alive, animate, Shakti universe that is here speaking to us. So it's how to attune to that in our everyday lives. And then the third part of that 4-part path is to allow the flow, right? That's the deep path of surrender and coming to deep acceptance of what's already here, which was a huge part of my journey, because as we can so often, it's the striving, it's the next thing that I described before that is actually blocking us from feeling deeply at rest here. And then the fourth one is align with your wild heart. And that's really that living with purpose, but coming into deep alignment. So for me, inner rewilding is awaken, attune, allow, and align. And it's these 4 key principles that radically shifted my life and caused me to actually leave my job so that I could support others to discover the beauty and the peace that's already here.
Yeah. And then you have this beautiful connection already with nature. And I feel a lot of people underestimate how deep that connection runs, and people forget that. I had a guest many episodes ago, but she's like, we are nature, we are one with nature, and when you realize that, you start to feel more in synergy with the cycles of Mother Earth, but also more respectful as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so for me, that recognition definitely came through these practices. And also, I did some work with and continue to do some work with plant medicines, which help cement those connections. But any ways that we can start to attune to the plants, whether through herbal medicines or astrology, and coming into understanding the cycles of the moon and how they guide our lives. So all these frequency work help us to feel actually this way, that this grand spiraling symphony of a universe, that we're not separate from that, but in fact, everything we experience is guided in some way by that, the frequencies of the universe speaking to us. But the mind is the thing that gets in the way, that makes us feel like we're somehow this separate me in here, and there's the world of frequency, out there. Yeah.
It's like, oh, here's the Holly here, but my soul frequency, the Holly out here, they know we're not in synergy. Why would we do
Right.
that?
Right. Of course not. Of course, they're all, that's just a story that we're telling ourselves. And yeah. So, now I love to weave and blend all these different practices to support people and meet them where they're at. And of course, to also remember that there's no end to this journey. There's no destination. Like what's happening right now is the destination. And the sooner that we can recognize that and step into that and be like, I'm on my perfect path right now, even if whatever it is for you that feels like it's not, that's uncomfortable, that you wish would go away, is actually the very thing that is here for your freedom, for your liberation, for you to fall in love with, for you to discover the beauty that's within whatever it is that your particular thing that you're working with. So for me right now, I'm not in a relationship and I live alone. And so I'm working with loneliness. I'm working with that energy that wants to play in my field and voices that will say you're alone. And then learning what is it to actually love and welcome this feeling that can feel uncomfortable at times. So, it's really learning to work with whatever's showing up in your field. Because at the same time, like with all this spaciousness comes so many gifts, an invitation to spend lots of time outside listening to the forest. But each of us has our crunchy thing, right?
I love that. Yes.
Unless you're the one person who has no crunchy things.
Well, if you are listening to that, like, what are you talking about? It's the thing that lights you up. It's the thing that makes you excited and you glow and you're happy to talk about it and you can talk about it for hours. And you're like, oh, did we walk out of that conversation? And if you haven't got that this might be a sign for you to maybe start to ask some questions like, what does bring me joy? What brings me peace? What lights me up? What allows me to have that inner rewilding of my system so I can find those balance of those emotions? And like you said, create that space so new things can come in too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When we align, when we let that thing that really, I call that, like, that's the resonance. That's like whatever is resonant within us that as you say lights you up, or it feels expansive. Then I like to say, like, that's just the language of the universe saying yes to you. Go in that direction. That's a yes. And learn to really feel and have the courage to follow those yeses. And then where we feel contracted, where we feel pulling away, where we feel fear or something else coming up, it's also an invitation to sit with those things and learning. And this is a lot of the work that I do with people, learning how to work with those in a positive way, in a way that you can really have compassion and be with those parts of yourself.
Accept all parts of you. Yeah, the
Right.
shadows,
The
light,
shadows.
everything.
Yeah, everything. Which, we can say that here. And I know that when you're in the middle of it, it's
Like
right. Unfortunately,
anger.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's lots of tools and lots of people out here in different ways, pointing the way. Right. So also listening for, there can be a lot of spiritual confusion too. This may be, where, well, which path do I follow? And that's, I think, where also this teaching of which is the one that lights you up, which is the one that really speaks to you. And I don't know about you, I've done different ones at different times, went deep into Tibetan Buddhism, right? And like now I'm like deep into Druidic practices because those are just lighting me up.
Yeah, and it's that cycle of your being and what it needs. And sometimes we need to try something and embed ourselves in it and go, actually, this doesn't feel, I've learned what I need to learn here right now. It's time for me to step on the next thing. And the thing is, because we have multiple timelines at any point, that it doesn't matter what you choose. It's just trusting that wherever you're meant to get to, you'll get there anyway.
That's right. Your awakening you can't get out of it. It's coming for you regardless. So you'll get there, which I love that message because it actually means you can relax,
Yeah.
the FOMO, the feeling of fear of missing out, that we can really feel where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to be part of all of these different circles. but then that just leads to spreading thin and overwhelm. And it's much better to go deep into the one thing that really feels super resonant with your heart.
Yeah. And it's about trusting yourself enough to do that too. For me at the moment, it's writing. Like I love writing and I love being in that, but I had to have a break from that for a few weeks because I need to focus on, I've got a book coming out on the weekend. So I'm like, okay, I've got to get all the things done for that. And then I'm like, oh no, I haven't done my writing. And my guides were like, hey, why are you beating yourself up? If you feel like you're forced to do it, then it's not, you're going to take all the joy away from that. It's like you'll go back to it when you're ready. Like just trust that. Just trust it's a cycle. You need to come back to that because you need to nurture this and birth this into the world, and then you can come back to the next thing that you need to do.
Beautiful. Well, congratulations. Since my book on Inner Rewilding just published last month. And so I know what a monumental feat that is to get a book out into the world. So congratulations.
It feels amazing. Tell us more about your book. That was a good segue in.
Okay. Well, so the book is called, not surprisingly, Inner Rewilding. And it contains both my personal story. So it's like part memoir, part spiritual guidebook. And I go through these 4 key principles I just went over in more detail with practices. And also, I'm developing a course, which by the time this comes out, hopefully will be launched.
Beautiful.
So there'll be a course companion to go with the book.
Yeah, which is a beautiful way to integrate what you've read into your life, right? Because sometimes we read a book and we're inspired, but then we don't actually have the action to create the inspiration into something.
Exactly. And that's where the course is meant to support people in that actual practices. And I do a lot of guidance. And I'm an insight timer meditation teacher as well, in case people want to look for me there. But I do a lot of work on the discovering of our true nature as peace, a lot of meditative guidance, because for me, that one thing is the single most helpful skill I ever learned as a human. I mean, other than the obvious things of just like being loving and kind and those things. But in terms of like an actual practice that shifted my perspective and shifted from this constant feeling of being a me in here in a world out there trying to get enough, really helped me relax back into the peace of my true nature. And so I love guiding people and supporting people with that. If you're one of those people listening and you don't know who your true self is, or you feel like you're trying to find your true self, come to one of my sessions on Insight Timer and we'll clear that up.
I love that. I love that so much. And I resonate with that so much, Holly, because for me, I remember over a year ago, someone said to me, what's your definition of success? And then, he lists all the things. It's like, oh, yeah, this. Actually, success is a feeling. Success is, and for me, I'm like, oh, peace. I was like, oh, so I know when I'm in flow and resonant because I feel this just peace. Like, it's like, okay, we can take all day to do this. It doesn't bother me. Like, it's fine. Like, it's just going to happen how it's meant to happen.
Exactly. When we're in that state of presence and perspective, where we actually feel like life is just unfolding and I'm along for the ride and it's unfolding at its own pace, and we just take our hands off the steering wheel and we let ourselves be guided. It doesn't mean we don't have intention or, we're on the boat, but we're really resourcing a deeper wisdom and intelligence, or what I call the wild intelligence of being. We're resourcing that wild intelligence and letting it take over. And it turns out that when we do that, life is so much easier. It flows. We can like stop trying so damn hard. And I really love helping people with that.
Yeah, and definitely, and it's about that flow. And I feel that that's the big shift that's happening at the moment, and people are noticing that we're stepping away. It's weird. It'll be a couple of months ago when this episode comes out, but I interviewed someone, and it's like the anti-hustle coach, because we've been so taught to hustle, 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 and push, 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 pause, meet your deadlines, do your 9 to 5, do all these things. Whereas, especially as women, we actually want to be in flow. Some days we just want to rest, and some days we just want to, like, we get that inspiration and that burst, right? And then we're like, oh, I'm going to pump out 10 chapters today. And you do. Like, you don't even think about it. But then the next day, I'm like, okay, actually, I don't want to do that today. I feel like I need to go hug a tree. And that's okay too. And, it's about deconstructing all the structures that we're being told we have to put ourselves inside.
1,000%. And this really ties so beautifully back to the nature theme. Nature has cycles and rhythms where the trees and, the tulips are coming up and there's a burst with a few weeks and then, and then they slow down. Nature is always in this cyclical growth and decay. And why would we not think that we're the same? Like she's actually through all of the movements of the spheres and the planets and all of that is doing the same thing for each of us. We're just, many of us, society, are just like trying to make us push through and do something that's actually not natural at all. So the more we tune into that and let that flow, the more our life flows. But what I have found is that the first easiest step to that is shifting my own perspective or mind back into its natural state. And that's a mind shift. That's not like a do thing, right? That's not like I need to go for, I don't know, necessarily spend time in nature. That's helpful. But actually doing practices that shift our point of view, for me, have been the most helpful.
I feel one of the most powerful questions I learned, what is this doing for me, rather than why is this happening to me? So like just shifting that perspective, even, when ailments show up in our bodies or actually in nature. So if you actually pay attention and let your garden grow how your garden wants to grow, you will have random plants show up that are actually there to give you medicine or there to give you a message or something like that. So for me, we had agrimony pop up and I didn't even know what it was. It was just beautiful divine timing. I was studying herbalism and I opened up my booklet where I was learning and I was like, oh, for the liver. Great. I need liver cleansing. And then it was the perfect time to go harvest it as well. So then I went and actually harvested it and dried it out and did what I need to do. But this is how things show up when you allow and you observe and you're actually open to it too, because so often, and I've talked about this before, but people will ask for a sign and then forget to look for the sign, or, or be like, hey, send me somebody to help me with this. And that person shows up and then they still say no. And it's like, but we just sent that person to you. That is exactly what you needed. So,
yeah. Right. But they had a mind concept of what it was supposed to look like. And they thought it was supposed to look something different. So, it showed up as, I don't know, the mailman delivering the mail, and whatever thing he said was actually the exact message you needed to hear, but you were too busy to listen or whatever.
I wanted the mail. It had to come in the mail, not through the mailman.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think what you're saying is so true. It's really about this is the attune part of the path of really attuning in a deeper way to the energetic universe and the 3D. I mean, everything that's showing up energetically, but also right before our eyes, really paying closer attention and attuning to that, noticing, taking time to notice, what's actually here. I think of a Peruvian shaman that I studied with who would say, everything is an oracle. We think like oracle cards are oracle cards, and of course they are, and they're great. But like, for him, his tobacco smoke was an oracle. So, the clouds in the sky are oracles. The animal that flies, the bird that shows up in your yard is an oracle. So the universe is alive and intelligent, and actually everything around us can be viewed as an oracle if we want to go into it in that way.
Yeah, 100%. Even like things that show up in our body. Why is my shoulder sore? I didn't do anything to it. Oh, hang on. What's it trying to tell me? This is like all these innate wisdom that the universe has created for us to check back in. And if you're always feeling lost, you just ask for something and it will show up. You just have to be looking for it too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And as we start to finish our time together, Holly, I ask the guests that come on the show, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
For everyone to know that everything will be okay. Because I really feel that this sense of not okayness is the thing that keeps us constantly searching and constantly in a state of fear. But if we can, what that's really saying is that's trust. If we all could actually deeply to our conversation trust what's here, we would all take a collective sigh of relief. And I think everything would start to flow from that if we could change that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And just breathe out, right? And remember presence.
Yeah. Remember, it's all actually unfolding in a divine order, and just trust deeply and listen. Yeah.
That's my soul lesson as to why I'm here. Trust. It's a big one.
It's a big one for me too. Yes. Yeah, that was a big one to work through because as an environmental activist and somebody who dedicated my life, there was a feeling of a constant need to fix the universe. If I could add one second thing to your question, it really, and where that trust leads, is actually to see the beauty that's already here. That when we actually learn to fall in love with what's here now, we can do that, then we will fall in love with the next moment and the next moment, right? So all we actually need to do is love what's actually here right now.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And if people want to come and work with you, Holly, find you or find your book, where can they go?
Yeah, thank you. Just go to hollycopeland.co and links to my book and how to work with me are all there. And yeah, I'm on Insight Timer every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And those are live sessions and it's a free app. So come find me there if that's an easy entry point into some of this work and just discovering the true peace and happiness of your true nature. That's the beginning of inner rewilding.
Yeah.
It can sound like deceptively simple. And in some ways it actually is, but in other ways, I think it's the most profound shift we can make. And I don't actually see that specific thing being taught that much. There's a lot of spiritual stuff and they're great things, but I don't see this kind of coming back to answering the who am I question and understanding who we are and that we can find the peace and happiness of our true nature right now. I don't see that taught a lot. So in this way, I think it's kind of unique. So yeah.
Yeah, and this is very much a dependence, like that kind of gets taught to, like there's this I actually wrote a book about it, but there's like this need of, especially in the spiritual community, where you always feel like you need someone to guide you, but sometimes it's just you need that guidance to come back to yourself and learn what your soul is telling you to do and what your next step might be. And it might be your soul says, hey, go talk to this person and get this support from that, but it's still you need to go that internal inquiry first, because if you can't figure out how to create your own peace, your own joy, how to have it come from you, then no matter who you go to, you're always going to be chasing that hungry ghost and never find what fulfills your soul.
Very well said. I couldn't agree more. And you are your own guru in that sense. And yes. Yeah, ultimately, the teaching is all within you. And certain teachers and practices can do a really good job of doing the exact pointing that you needed to get you back to yourself so you can hear the next, messages and step for you.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much, Holly, for spending your time with me and for creating this beautiful practice and book of inner rewilding, because I love nature. So I love that you have incorporated this aspect of who you were, who you are now, and found a bridge between the two, which is so magical in itself.
Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate that. Thanks for everything that you're doing on this beautiful podcast. I know that I can see from all the different beautiful people you have here that you are offering very beautiful souls and teachings. And you've got such a bright light. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Mm.
My virtual obsession, my romantic thriller, is now available on Amazon and other online retailers. This book explores the intersection of loneliness, love, and how chasing perfection through technology can lead to fantasy and reality colliding. My virtual obsession out now. Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.